Welcome to the Inner Self-Confidence Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Delamont. Real talk for women who are done overthinking, freezing, or abandoning themselves. If you are ready to feel calm in your body, trust yourself, and speak up without forcing it, you're in the right place. Because confidence isn't something you perform, it's something you build from the inside out. Let's go. Welcome to the Inner Self-Confidence Podcast, episode 27. The father wound. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about what the father wound is, how to know if we have an unhealed father wound, and what to do to heal it. Let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about something that's incredibly personal for me and something I'm currently processing and still grieving. We're diving into the father wound. The father wound is the emotional and psychological impact that comes from your relationship or lack of relationship with your father or father figure. I already went into the mother wound in episode 3, and that's actually my most listened to episode. And the one thing I did say in that episode is that healing your mother wound is not about healing the relationship with your mom. Healing your father wound is not about healing the relationship with your father. It's about healing these parts of ourselves that are representative of our mother and our father's relationship to ourselves. And I'm going to dive into that in a bit. But just to give you a little idea of why this is so personal for me and why I'm actually processing and grieving a lot of this currently is because about a year ago, I found out that the man who raised me is not my biological father. Yep. I was a child born out of infidelity and kept a secret my entire life. Both my mother and my biological father passed away about 12 and 13 years ago, a year apart. And I was never able to have that authentic relationship with them where we could talk about the truth, nor was I able to ask them any questions. But I finally got to have that opportunity with the man who raised me. I flew to America. We had a conversation, and this is something that he always knew but wasn't sure. He didn't have confirmation. He had asked my mom multiple times when I was little, but it turned into fights, and she denied it. She basically gaslit him, and she passed away with that secret inside. So yes, I have daddy issues just like most of the world. I truly believe that we all have mother wounds and we all have father wounds. And I used to think that my mother wound was bigger, but now I'm realizing that my father wound is actually something that I'm still really healing from. I'm not saying I'm completely healed from my mother wound, but I have a much deeper understanding with my relationship to my inner world. I'm only now realizing how much this father wound has actually impacted me. I'm still grieving a father-daughter relationship I never got to have. I understand how and why it happened, and I can intellectually make sense of it, but that doesn't mean I'm not affected by it, and I refuse to suppress it. Understanding something doesn't erase its impact. Healing isn't about making it disappear. It's about learning how to hold it differently. And that's where the work is. So when it comes to the father wound, I'm going to talk about what it actually is, how it shows up, how to know that you have this unhealed father wound, and most importantly, how to start actually healing it. Let's start with the basics. What is the difference between our mother wound and father wound? Our mother wounds shape our relationship with ourself. It's our inner world. So how you feel about who you are, your self-worth, your ability to nurture yourself, your boundaries with your time, your energy, and your self-care. This is what I work on in my inner self-confidence program because this is a wound that I have really healed and I worked very hard on it. What I didn't realize is that I still have a lot of healing to do in my father wound. This shapes your relationship with the outside world. So this is how you navigate your own authority, your success, your career, your money, your safety, your romantic relationships usually, and your boundaries with your money, career, your people, your partners. It's your sense of belonging in spaces that aren't quote unquote home. Now, you are not just carrying your mother's patterns and your father's patterns, you're actually carrying the relationship patterns that they had between them as well. So the way they communicated or didn't, because unfortunately, avoidance is our go-to response most of the world, the way they loved or the way they didn't love, the way they fought, avoided, connected, or disconnected. We all inherit that because that is what we watch and we learned. But now as adults, we get to unlearn the unhelpful behaviors and learn better strategies. Now, the father wound can come from very obvious wounds, like an absent father, whether he was physically or emotionally absent, an abusive or volatile father, a critical or dismissive father, a father who was there but never really saw you, a father who maybe you lost too soon, a father who wasn't your biological father and you didn't know, or even a father who tried his best but was carrying his own unhealed wounds. And honestly, that's probably about 99% of people because I don't know anybody born before 1990 who had an emotionally available, mature father who didn't have unhealed wounds. Like it just didn't happen. I'm sorry. That's reality. And it also doesn't have to be dramatic or damaging. Sometimes the quietest wounds cut the deepest. You didn't have to have complete, obvious father wounds to actually have a father wound. So you're probably thinking, okay, Katie, but why does this matter now? Like, I'm an adult, I moved on, I don't even really remember much of my childhood. It doesn't really matter. Like, I'm an adult, like, I'm over the age of 40. Who cares? I've moved on. But your unhealed father wound shows up in your life like this. In your career and ambitions, you're going to overwork to prove your worth. You're going to shrink yourself to avoid being too much. You might struggle with authority figures, either rebelling against them or desperately seeking their approval. I know I can say honestly, I massively struggle with authority figures, and I had a big problem with rebelling against them growing up. You might self sabotage right before success because deep down you don't believe you deserve it. I've been there, done that. You'll choose partners who are emotionally unavailable, just like your dad was, or you are still. You might chase people who can't fully see you because that feels familiar. You might struggle to trust people, and you might also become the fixer, the caretaker, because you learn that love is earned, not giving. And your sense of safety, you might feel like you have to protect yourself because nobody else will. You might struggle to ask for help, and you might feel like you are too much or not enough. I know I have been all of those things at one point in my life, and I still struggle with quite a few of those. These patterns feel familiar because that's what you grew up with. And even when these patterns are hurting us, keeping us small, they're running our lives, most of us don't even stop to question them. And we just think, oh, that's just the way I am. I'm never going to change. But this is the lie that the wounds tell you. You can change. But first, you have to stop and say, I want to relearn a healthier way. I believe we all have a mother wound and a father wound to some degree. It's not about blaming our parents. They were all just doing the best they could with what they had. It's about taking responsibility now for our own healing because nobody else can do that for us. Okay. So here's some more signs that you're struggling with your father wound. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how this is also showing up in my life and how I didn't realize that your father wound is deeply connected to like your money, your career, feeling confident and standing in your own authority about who you are and how you show up in the world. And this is something that I have of like I'm really good with my inner world, but when it comes to really owning my power and who I am and what I do and what I'm capable of, like I still struggle with that. I still struggle with imposter syndrome massively. But you know what the funny thing is the day I found out about my biological father, something inside of me like snapped. And I have been stepping into my power of who I am, what I want, what I'm here to do, and my business like no other. And I know it's because of this father wound thing. Like for the first time, I now have authenticity and clarity about my father wound. And my business is massively increasing because I'm healing the father wound. It's crazy to watch. So, other ways that the father wound will show up in your life is you probably struggle with trust, especially with men or maybe authority figures. I know I still have a very big issue with authority figures. I trust men, but authority figures still boil my blood a lot of the times. You might be like waiting for the other shoe to drop, and you don't believe people when they say that they'll show up for you. You might be overly independent or overly dependent, or what I would say hyper independent or in a codependent relationship. You either refuse to get help because you learned that you can't rely on anyone, or you're desperately seeking that validation and approval that you actually never got from your dad. So I know I was hyper independent massively for so long, and I've only in the past few years have really worked on that, being in a marriage for the past 10 years. Like, the more you receive, the more you receive. That is one of my biggest mantras. And the more I've allowed myself to just receive help, ask for help, and be dependent on other people, not in a codependent way, but in a very vulnerable way, the more my life is expanded, both emotionally, physically, monetarily, all of it. The more you receive, the more you receive. You could potentially have a complicated relationship with your power. Now, this is something that I definitely have been struggling with. You either dim your light to make other people feel comfortable, or you might overcompensate by being aggressive or controlling. And like I said, I've seen myself in both of those situations, and I'm only now really stepping into my divine masculine, what I would call it, healing this father wound. And it's not about healing my relationship with my fathers, it's about healing that relationship with myself that represent or that was learned from my father figures. I know this is another thing that I used to do. I used to choose emotionally unavailable partners because I was emotionally unavailable because I didn't get that growing up from my father. He is an amazing, beautiful man. I love him to the bone and the core. And I know that he loves me so much and so deeply. And I have so much more love and respect for him now that we have this truth in our lives. But he was very emotionally distant and I wouldn't say cold. He grew up in a household where he never heard the words I love you. So if he didn't grow up with that, that was really hard for him to start to say. And he only started saying it very recently. So I definitely would go towards a lot of emotionally unavailable men because I was emotionally unavailable. I loved the chase. I loved the uncertainty. And I was like hoping that somebody would finally see me. But, again, being in my marriage, I have learned to heal a lot of these parts. But this is another big one that shows up for me. You feel like you don't belong, especially in professional spaces. This is one I've been 9 years in my business, and I'm only now like letting go of that imposter syndrome and actually feeling confident in professional spaces. This is so much to do with my father wound, and I had no idea before. I'm like, why is it taking me almost 10 years to make six figures in my business? And not that money is the goal, but it has taken me so long to finally feel confident and comfortable in my own skin when it comes to my profession and it comes to my career and it comes to how and what I want to do in this world. And I'm like, this has all been my father wound. But anyway, again, it's not about blaming, it's about understanding the patterns and the blocks that have been holding you back. Now, you might also be terrified of being abandoned, or you abandon people so it doesn't happen to you. So you either cling too tightly, or maybe you leave and run before they can leave you. You might struggle to set boundaries, and boundaries with the father wound have to do with the outside boundaries. So, setting boundaries with other people, setting boundaries with professional people, your partners, your friends. When it comes to the mother wound, setting boundaries has to do with your time, your energy, and your self care. It's all that inner world. Now, if you struggle to set boundaries with other people, that is definitely a father wound. And how it can also show up is that you have a hard time celebrating your wins. This is again something that I definitely do not do often and I've had a hard time doing, but it's something that this year, again, I'm really putting into practice. When you have a hard time celebrating your wins, it's because deep down you're still waiting for someone to be proud of you. And when they're not there, the wins feel empty. And I just want to know if any of this is resonating for you. Because for me, it's been all of it at different times. Like I said, I've been the overachiever. I've been the one chasing emotionally unavailable partners. I have also been the one who couldn't ask for help. And now, knowing what I know about my fathers, both the man who raised me and my biological father, it's making so much more sense. And I now want to just talk about how we can start healing this father wound. This is something, like I said at the beginning, that I'm still processing and I'm still grieving. And this episode could be a little bit premature for me, as, like I said, I'm still going through it, but I can definitely give you a few pointers and some easy takeaway steps because it's not a quick fix. It's deep generational work, but it is possible and it is worth it. I believe we can all heal anything we want to, but it definitely starts with a willingness or an acknowledgement of the wound. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. So stop minimizing it. Stop saying it wasn't that bad or other people had it worse or, oh, but my dad loved me. I don't have any daddy issues. Your pain is valid. Your experiences matter. And saying that you had an unhealed father wound and it's affecting my life will be one of the most liberating, empowering things you could do. This is not about blaming or shaming your parents. It's about understanding. I didn't have the understanding before, I believe, because the universe was waiting for me to be in a more stable position to really process all of this. So the first step is always acknowledging the wound, not from a place of victim, but from empowerment of saying, yes, this wound is here, but I am able to heal it. So now we have to start to grieve what we didn't get. And this is what I'm in the process of doing. I was just crying in the car on my way to teach a yoga class this morning, thinking about this dad stuff, thinking about doing this podcast, because I am still grieving and it's hard. And when you grieve, you know, a relationship that you never got to have, and as well as a relationship, two relationships you never got to have, right? So grieving my biological father, but also grieving the authentic relationship I didn't get to have with the man who raised me. But I also know that the universe works its magic, and there was a reason why it happened the way it did. And maybe it would have been too hard for the man who raised me to see me have another relationship with this other man. And I believe that was also protection for a reason too. So grieving what you didn't get is also valid. And grief is something to be felt and metabolized, not suppressed. And this is why I'm keeping this part of the podcast in, because you can hear in my voice like I'm sort of on the edge of that crying and I'm a little bit teary. But I don't shy away from crying anymore, and it's so refreshing because I had the hardest time crying for so many years. It was just so hard to get tears out. And now I'm like, this is great. Like this is processing. So let yourself feel it, cry. Also, if there's rage and anger, which I spent many years processing, I wrote fuck you letters. I did rage on a page. I punched pillows with bats. I got that anger and rage and resentment out. Like, stop minimizing that you're fucking angry. And if you're angry, you need to get it out. Like, what you suppress is gonna just like take some weights down in that basement and explode later on in life. You're not being dramatic, you're being human. So allow yourself to grieve. Like when I notice that grief coming up, I just let it come up. I let myself cry. I talk to myself like, okay, like what do you need right now? What's going to make you feel best right now? And what is this saying? What is this telling you? Like just get it out. Next, identifying patterns. So, this is why it's actually really powerful to work with coaches, mentors, therapists, etc. Because when you look at your relationships, your romantic, professional, and friendships, you're going to be repeating dynamics. And most of the time, we are so far into our dynamics that we don't realize that they're actually unhelpful and unhealthy until somebody on the outside makes that observation. This is not about judging you, but it's about learning to understand what you may have normalized as healthy and functional, but is actually highly dysfunctional and very unhealthy and unhelpful, but it's controlling your life, and then you're so confused why you can't move forward and why you still feel confused and lost and overwhelmed and underwhelmed all at the same time. Are you chasing unavailable people? Are you shrinking yourself either at work or in your relationships? Are you overworking for approval? Like, getting curious, not critical, and working with somebody, I really do believe is powerful when we want to identify patterns because so much and so often we can't see our unhelpful patterns because a fish only knows the water they swim in, right? Another step after that is reparenting yourself. And this is, this isn't an easy one size fits all process. It's becoming the parent, both the father and the mother you needed. So this is about when it comes to the father wound, protecting yourself. So this is where about setting clear boundaries, walking away from things that don't serve you. And this is for me, you know, I worked a lot of this on my inner world, and I'm amazing when it comes to setting boundaries with my time, my energy, and my self care. And I walk away from relationships and things that don't serve me. But when it comes to my business, when it comes to my money, my career, when it comes to my power, I have a very hard time with boundaries and walking away from things that don't serve me. I remember I was teaching this yoga class that was paying me $40 for years because I had the, and like, I even stayed in, I stayed working in a retail job for years that I didn't hate the job, but it was not something I wanted to do. And it was no longer serving me. But it took me years to leave it because I have this deep fear of like, oh, I can't leave if money's coming in. Like, I need to make sure that more money is coming in if I'm losing money. But it like, I'm not going to talk about it on this episode, but when it comes to manifesting and money mindset, like, this all has to do with the father wound. But, anyways, going back to the steps of reparenting yourself, learning how to protect your boundaries and yourself, providing for yourself. This is not just financially, but definitely emotionally, giving yourself the stability that you craved from both the inner and the outer world. Being proud of yourself, celebrate your wins, even the small ones. You don't need anybody else's approval, and show up for yourself. Keep the promises you make to yourself, be consistent. I would say this is probably the biggest struggle my clients have. They have a very hard time. And again, time, energy, and self care is that mother wound, but keeping the promises you make for your actual professional and career life as well. And maybe, your career is staying home with the kids right now. That's also very much a very much a career, and it's being okay in that, like stepping in that authority and power that it is not a shameful thing to be a stay-at-home mom. It is not a shameful thing to also have a full-time job and a kid at home. Like, it's about really stepping into your choices, being consistent, and making promises to yourself that you actually keep and follow through with when it comes to your partner, your career, your money, your success. Like, this also is very much important about being consistent. And then, of course, believing in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else can. I love the quote by Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, and he says, when you accept yourself, the whole world accepts you. It really is that simple, and it comes back to you. And another thing that you can do to help heal the father wound is this idea of rewriting the narrative and choosing differently. This is something I work with myself doing and as well as my clients, but it's the story you've been telling yourself. So the story is, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm unlovable, I'm not capable, I'm not certified, I'm not qualified, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough power, I don't have enough authority. All of these stories that we're telling ourselves, we can rewrite those narratives, and we can then start to do things to prove to ourselves that that old narrative is actually just a lie, it's a story, and it's false, and it's not true. And so that's what I started really stepping into in my business, is making now decisions that are really scary and things of like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough to do. I do it anyways. And then afterwards, I look back and say, see, you can do these things. See, Katie, you can do these hard things. See, you are capable, certified, qualified, and have the authority. And it all starts with you. That's where the real work happens, when you start to choose to do things differently. And I teach this in my programs about your nervous system. If you normally freeze, you do the opposite and you speak up. If you normally fawn and try to people please, again, you do the opposite and you actually speak up when it's really challenging and difficult. Don't wait to be perfect. Do it before you're ready. So when you feel yourself being pulled towards the familiar, like the unavailable partner, or the boss who doesn't see you, or the friend who takes more than they give, or you not actually going forward with what you want to do in life, ask yourself, is this familiar or is this what I actually want? And then choose differently. It really is that simple, but it's actually a really hard thing to do because it's uncomfortable. And we know that the brain and the body loves to be comfortable. But if you want to grow, the goal is never to be comfortable. The goal is to feel free. And if you want freedom, that does not come from staying in your comfort zone. It comes from getting uncomfortable as often as you possibly can. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and getting uncomfortable with the comfortable. That's Marissa Peers, who says that she's a hypnotherapist. And another way to heal from the father wound, I talked about this before, but it's about seeking support. You don't have to do this alone. In fact, you absolutely should not do this alone. And I have not done any of my healing alone. Yes, I've spent a lot of time by myself in meditation retreats, a lot of reflection, and a lot of me time. But so much has also been in coaching, mentors, support groups, women's circles, hosting retreats with 20 women. Like that was healing me as well, with friends. Find people who can witness you in your healing and your vulnerability and can hold space for your grief. The people who remind you who you're becoming when you forget. Seeking support is so, so important and is a huge part of that father wound of having that vulnerability to say, I need help, or can you help me, or I don't know what to do. That is one of the bravest things we could ever say. And nothing in this world has ever come about by doing it alone. And there's that great quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's an African proverb. And last but certainly not least, something I don't think people need to do. I think it's something that happens automatically when you start to heal your wounds, your father wound, your mother wound, whatever wound it is forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. And I don't think forgiveness is something we do. I think forgiveness is something that actually happens naturally when we let go and let God, shall I say. It's not a requirement for healing, but I do believe it's something that naturally happens. And remember that you can still heal and still be angry and still grieve. That doesn't mean you can't forgive and accept things. Things are on your own timeline, not anybody else's. So, where am I in all of this? Honestly, like you saw me tear up before, I am in the thick of it. It's not derailing my day, but I allow myself to grieve. I allow myself to get angry. I allow myself to feel confused. But I'm so grateful for the awareness and for all the tools that I have in my toolbox. And my ability to reparent myself is my biggest tool that I have. And I understand why I've made the choices I've made because somebody did tell me 20 years ago I had so many opportunities to have conversations with my mother and my biological father. But for whatever reason, my body and my mind chose not to. And again, this is also something I have to grieve with a choice that I decided to do. I could sit here and say I have so much regret about it, but I actually don't because I know that our bodies are so, so smart and they do things to protect us. And I don't ever question that. Now I'm learning how to really protect myself and my energy when it comes to my time and my business, with my partner, with my authority, how I show up for myself. I'm learning that the relationship I've been searching for outside of myself with maybe my father's actually starts within. And learning isn't linear. Some days I feel really strong, and some days I feel quite vulnerable and weak and back at square one. Like, who am I? What am I doing with my life? Where am I going? Like, who am I to help people heal? But I'm not giving up, and neither should you. It is putting one brave foot in front of the other. So if you're listening to this and you're realizing, oh my God, I have an unhealed father wound, welcome to the club. Nothing wrong with having a little daddy trauma. It's not a fun club, but it's a powerful one because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you start healing it, everything changes: your relationships, your career, your sense of self, your entire life. So start today, acknowledge it, grieve it, start rewriting the story, ask for support and help. You deserve a life where you feel safe, seen, and celebrated, not because someone else gave you that, but because you are giving it to yourself. Thank you for being here and thank you for doing your work on yourself. And of course, thank you for trusting me with your own time and your own healing. And I'll see you in the next episode. If you want to read about my wild ride from mindlessness to mindfulness, Trust the Flames is my best-selling memoir. You can buy a copy on Amazon or anywhere they really sell books. You can jump on my website if you do want to check out where to find it or what it's about. I actually don't have in here the story about finding out that the man who raised me is not my biological father. That's actually what my second book is going to be about. So that's called Lies We Inherit. I'm currently working on it, but it could take another year or two to finish. But that story is probably a bit more about my mother wound, I should say. And if you want to know more about working together, either in a one-to-one container or about my group coaching program, 90 Days to Inner Self-Confidence, let's jump on a free discovery call. It's completely free, 20, 30 minutes. We just talk about where you're at, what you're struggling with, and if I am someone who could potentially help you with that. So jump on my website, katiedelamon.com, or jump on Instagram and follow me there. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Till next time.